we're going to have a wolf extravaganza. We're very lucky to have Gary Allan, who will talk to us about wolves, their role in ecology, and introduce us to some of his wolf family.
Will do. Thanks, Q. That's great. Well, welcome everybody that's joining us, and looking forward to giving you, I think, a pretty interesting presentation. So I live in South Wellington, and have a place called the SWELL Wolf Education Center. So SWELL is abbreviation for South Wellington, and I kind of a play on words. I think it's kind of a swell place with all the wolves and that. So I have 4 very high content wolf dogs. The wolf content in them is well over 90%, and the way I raise them and let them be is that for all intents and purposes they're wolves. Tundra, who you'll see, she's 90% wolf. Our veterinarian, who's a local chap, is a wildlife veterinarian. He's seen Tundra a number of times and worked with wolves and said, I don't see any dog in them, but a little bit of dog, it just means that I can have them without a permit. But you know, I caution people, these are not family pets and that. So anyway, I've been doing wolf education now, for in excess of 14 years. And with Tundra, about 13 and a half of those 14 years, Tundra and I have been visiting schools throughout BC. We've done well over 200 schools, well over 35,000 students, and then we do a whole bunch of community events, and that either by Zoom like now, or when we could visit community organizations, we did that. So anyway, yeah, if you want to, Q, if you want to start with the first slide, I guess it's maybe an introductory slide or whatever. There we are. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to show you a quick 2-minute video. Now, this is a video on the reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone National Park. This occurred in 1995, the first group that came from northern Alberta around the Edson, Hinton, Jasper area. There were 17 of them. And then the next year, 96, there was 15. They came from sort of northeastern BC around the Chetwynd area. And the reason being is they wanted wolves that hunted elk to be reintroduced into the park. So they were actually it was elk that they were hunting, and that so see, those are elk, not deer. So those are the aspen and willow, and aspen trees only grow for 125 years. So if you don't get them reproducing, then you've got a lot of problems. With the beaver, there was one beaver colony in northern Yellowstone Park. After 6-7 years, there were 12 beaver colonies, and then the reason being was because there was some trees around for them to eat and build their dams. So that scene where you just saw the wolf chasing the elk, I'll talk a fair amount about that, because that's the most important scene in this whole video. What happened was around 1925, the U.S. Park rangers, the Park Service, they wanted to attract more people, visitors to the national parks. Yellowstone was the first national park in the US, and in fact, the first national park apparently in the world, somewhere around 1870s. So what they thought, the Park Service, obviously not based on science, they decided that they were going to kill off all the wolves. They would extirpate the wolves from Yellowstone. And they did that over a few years. And by around 1925, they accomplished their goal. There apparently were no wolves left in Yellowstone. By 1940, a very prominent American ecologist by the name of Aldo Leopold, he observed that the park was starting to die. And the reason being was the elk that were the main ungulate species in the park. Ungulates are your elk and deer and moose and bison. There's bison there and caribou. They are browsers. They browse on vegetation and they're always looking around for the predator. And the wolf was the main predator of the elk. There were cougars in the park. They didn't kill them. And there was grizzly bears. But we know that grizzly bears sleep 6 months of the year, 6 and 7 months of the year in Yellowstone. Cougars are in low density. There's not that many of them. So they don't have that much of an impact upon the prey species. And we could clearly see that. So this park just deteriorated. As I mentioned, the aspen trees, they last about 125 years. And what happened was the aspen tree and the willow trees and that, because a lot of the trees in Yellowstone are deciduous. You know, we're up at 6,000 to 8,000 feet. So there's, you know, some pine and black spruce and a lot of deciduous trees. What would happen is the young aspen and willow trees wouldn't get higher than 3 feet because the elk would just keep eating them. They'd eat the crown of the tree, the top of the tree, and that has to get above the browsing height of elk for it to continue to grow, and then you can eat the vegetation at the bottom of the tree. So when you saw that clip where the elk was being chased by the wolf, and what that did, just by the fact that the wolves were on the landscape and doing that, they changed those elk back into browsers, because without the wolves there, they became like grazers, like sheep. They just stood there and ate everything. They didn't have to move because there weren't many predators. And now, when the wolves came back, if you were an elk and you continued to want to be a grazer, your lifespan was seriously shortened. And so what actually it was the first introduction was 17 wolves, not 14. What they did is they took out the old, the sick, the injured, and some of the young, and they cleaned up those elk herds and made them much stronger. But the most important thing is they got them moving again. And when you saw that elk running across the creek to the other side, it wasn't stopping to munch on any of the willow or aspen. It was continuing to run so that it wouldn't be brought down by the wolf or the wolves. And what it did was it just allowed the vegetation in 6 years to quintuple. So then, as I mentioned, you get the beavers back. Well, the beavers then built their dams, and that created wetlands, which was, a habitat for many other species, waterfowl, which increased tremendously, and your amphibians, your salamanders, your frogs, some of the fish and whatever. It also helped to control flooding and that. And it was all because they reintroduced the wolves, and wolves being on the landscape, they moved them. Wolves keep Yellowstone in balance. So the wolf is the keepers of the balance. And so you see the gray wolf at the top, and then you see a whole bunch of arrows that go down to the various animals. So the elk, as I explained, they brought them back from grazers back to browsers. And so then we see the beaver in the middle. And as I explained about the beaver is an ecosystem engineer because of what it does with the rivers and the creeks and creating wetlands. The coyote was killing a lot of the antelope, which you see in the bottom left, and some of the other animals. Now, wolves don't like coyotes. Wolves are a top predator. Coyote is a mesopredator, a mid-ranking predator. They killed some of the coyotes. And so what ended up happening is many of those animals came back so that there was enough voles and mice and whatever for the raptors, like the golden eagle, bald eagle, and that. So now I'd like almost to see the gray wolf there in the middle, because the wolf is a top predator, an apex predator. The wolf is also a keystone species. And a keystone species is a species that has such a great effect upon an ecosystem. So for example, some examples, in terrestrial ecosystems, the wolf is there and that. The bear isn't much of a keystone species because it hibernates inside of the ecosystem quite a bit. The cougar, in some very limited ones, can be a keystone species. Again, it's low density, so it doesn't have the same impact. You can have other animals and that can provide that keystone species on the in a terrestrial environment. The coyote can in certain circumstances. In aquatic ones, you have the shark. The shark is a perfect keystone species. So is the sea otter. The sea otter eats the sea urchins, which allow the kelp beds to come back. And with that, it's like the forest of the ocean comes back, and you get a lot more sea life in that. Not all apex predators are a keystone species. It's a pretty distinct role, and the wolf plays that, and you see that playing out in Yellowstone. Another concept that I want to talk to you about is the reason it's called the social stability of the wolf pack or the family group. And essentially what the concept is, wolves are, as we know, live in a pack and in a family group, also known as a pack. And what they do is, because it's such a well-ordered social organization where you generally have a dominant male and a dominant female, they're the ones that have the pups. And so we're talking packs of 5 to 14, okay? And what happens is, it takes about 2 to 3 years for a wolf to learn how to hunt properly. If you're going to bring down one of these elk or a moose, you better know what you're doing, even as a team, that hunting team of the pack, because any one of those animals can kill a wolf. Okay, they don't have to kill it outright. All they have to do is break its leg or break its jaw, and it will die. So, for example, if you have a pack of 6 and you have 3 pairs of wolves, you got the same number of wolves, 6. But pairs will kill 3 times more prey than a wolf pack. And the reason being is the wolf pack with 6 has established its territory, and it protects its territory, and it can bring down its the prey. And then they can stay around that carcass for probably 4 or 5 days in that. A pair of wolves is what they're doing is they're starting to establish their territory. So they have to constantly move to protect it and establish it. And then when they have the pups and they build up the pack, they'll be back to that same situation as the pack of 6. So they move more often. And so they could kill today and they'll move on and they'll kill maybe in a couple more days and that. So you can see that when you start to break down the pack by killing off the leadership of the wolf pack, they don't learn to hunt as well. So what'll happen is the yearlings or the 2-year-olds can then start to, you'll actually see more predation on livestock as a result of that. And if you leave the pack intact, you have less killing of the wild prey, and you have less killing of the depredation on livestock. So it's critical to leave them alone. Dr. Gordon Haber was the wolf biologist in Denali National Park in Alaska that really observed this. He studied wolves there for 43 years and he knew them intimately. There's a book called Among Wolves by Gordon Haber, and then also written by Mary Beth Holloman. For me, it's the book that I go to the most as an adult if you want to know about wolves, because Gordon studied them so much. And he advocated for stopping, the wolf culls, because you can see if you kill the wolf culls, like BC has been doing it for the last 5 years, well, more than that, from 2014, killing them from helicopters. They have absolutely no idea who the wolf that they're killing, what rank it is within that pack. And so you do way more damage than that. You're best to leave them alone. Even as you see the park rangers in Yellowstone, 1925, they did it. 2020 right now, 95 years later, we're making the same mistake. So at our center here, Mohegan, who is the mom, and then there was Nahani. He was the male. In 2019, in February, Mohegan came into heat, as they do, and she mated with Nahani. She had not mated with them the 3 or 4 previous years. She didn't want to mate with them, and she did. And on May the 5th, 2019, she gave birth to 2 pups. So there's the den. That's out in their backyard. It's 3 feet deep, 6 feet in. There they are. That's the first. They're 17 days old there. There's Mom taking a look at it. So we didn't know how many pups she had because she was in there with them. And there's the 2 of them. They're trying to climb out of this den that's 3 feet deep. It's their first hike is like trying to get up Mount Everest. So that's what little wolf pups look like. They're a pound at birth. They're blind. They don't come out of the den till around this age. There they are at 20 days of age, and you can see that their motor skills are needing practice. Cute little characters as they were. There they are nursing with Mohegan. I'm 4 feet away filming this. Now, Mohegan was such a great mom. And here they are at about 5 weeks. They're eating cooked chicken there. And they have to eat that. I was feeding Tundra at 5 weeks of age, chicken drumsticks, raw. She was eating bone and all. So there they are. They're about a month old here. Mohegan's laying down. That's Stakai, the female pup in front. Here comes Denali. He flops down beside his mom, puts his big paw on her head. Hi, Mom. How you doing? And here they are. They're about 2 months of age. That's Denali in the foreground. Stakai's in the background. That's them, their first howling session. There's Mohegan howling. And Tundra was on the deck howling, so all 4 of them were howling. And there's Stakai, that's the female one. What you see there, that's a piece of elk carcass. It's the rib cage. a First Nation friend of ours gave us 2 elk legs and the rib cage. And so you can see Stakai's looking at me. I'm about 30 feet away filming this, and she's eating it, but she's keeping a pretty good close eye on me. And she doesn't want me to get any closer. Here is Tundra. Now I got her on a leash. She's in that's Denali, the male pup there that she's interacting with. Stakai is the female pup, and she's shyer, and so she was behind. And here they are at about 3 months, and they're playing with mom. Now Mohegan was an incredible mom. I mean, she was 5 years of age when she had the pups. In the wild, she would have remembered herself as a pup and her mom looking after her. And then she would remember, the yearlings looking after her. Then as she became a yearling, she would look after that year's pups and so forth. But she had none of this, because she was taken away from her mom at about 12 days of age. But my wife and I think that even though that's very young, which they have to do, she would remember that. And so she was able to look after these pups. And she just did an incredible job. Where you see where the den was, we didn't see them till May 23rd. That's when they came to the entrance of the den. 7 days later, around June the 1st, I went out there early in the morning to feed them, and they weren't there. What Mohegan had done was she had taken her pups further down in the enclosure. It's a fairly big enclosure, and there was a big pile of cottonwood rounds that was stacked up. They would climb up to the top of them. And Mohegan and Nahani, the father, they dug tunnels underneath it, like dens and that. And she moved her pups down there. And what she was saying to us, that was to me and my wife, even though we didn't interfere at all, we'd go out there, we'd sit on the bench. If the pups came up to us, wanted to sniff us, that was fine. If not, we just observed. But she was making the clear statement that this was my family. These are my pups, and I'm going to look after them, and I don't need you. And wolves don't need humans. She demonstrated that so well to us. And we did. We just let her be. And she did a fabulous job raising Denali and Stakai. And now they're 19 months old. They have a really very strong relationship with their mom. Okay, so there's Denali. That's the male pup. These pictures here, he's probably about 15 months old. And so he's named after that park where Gordon Haber and that did the research. And prior to that, there was another guy by Dr. Adolf Murray, who actually started the first wolf study in the 1930s, mid 1930s. There's Mohegan. So Mohegan means wolf in the Cree language. And as I talked about her, she's about 6.5 years old there. Her brother is at the Wolf Conservation Center in New York State. It's a large wolf education center, and they do some captive breeding of like red wolves and that, trying to reintroduce them into the southeast part of the United States. That's Stakai, the female. Stakai is the word for wolf in the Hulkaminam language. So the Staminas people, we've been to the Staminas Community School on 3 occasions, and that's how they spell Stakai, Stakea, Stakai. For the people down around the Saanich Peninsula, which are also Coast Salish, they say that Stakea means to go hunting. There's Tundra. So there's Tundra. So Tundra lives in our house. She's almost 14, and she likes being inside. There's her deer leg. A local hunter friend of ours has, he got three three deer this fall, and so he donated the pelts and the rib cages and the legs there. So that's Tundra's, and the other three out the back have had the benefit of for the last 6 weeks or so, eating off of the rib cages and that. So the chicken and beef that I give them, and I give them also a chicken neck and back, the chicken carcass, that's raw, and they like that. Yes, thanks, Susan. Yeah, she does. We hope she keeps going and going. Hey, girl, let me get out of the light. Anyway, so they've been eating deer, and so they leave the chicken and the beef, but they do eat it, but they prefer the deer. But I can't get deer year round, and that, so they get it when they can. So Tundra is the one that I take into the schools, and and you can see, I mean, she looks all wolf, but her behavior is not wolf because she's very social. Wolves don't socialize with humans. They don't want to have any contact with humans. They live longer by avoiding us. And there's her. Hey, how you doing? Hey, oh, as you can see, life is fairly tough around here for her. All right. Okay. Well, actually, I can stay here and answer the questions, and that I think you probably much prefer to see Tundra than me, so we can do that. So, Marina, you can fire away with the questions.
Is the leader of the pack, are they the ones that always lead the hunts?
Well, the alpha male and alpha female are the dominant ones. They're the ones that have the pups, and yeah, they're going to be the ones that are going to make the decisions about going, hunting and when to hunt, and they'll teach the young how to hunt. Now, there's on our I have a YouTube channel called the SWELL Wolf Education Center. So remember, SWELL is SWELL. If you go there, you can see I've got posted some videos, one of which is a video of a pair of wolves in Yellowstone National Park bringing down an elk. Now, wolves hunt elk differently than deer because elk are in herds. And this piece of video footage was given to me. I bought it for the meager amount of $20 from an Emmy winning filmmaker by the name of Bob Landis, who does a lot of filming in Yellowstone, and he sent me the clip, and all I did was kind of narrate it a bit. And so what you'll see how they hunt. It's really, really an instructive piece of video and that. So I hope that answered your question, Marina.
What made you get started with this, Gary?
Yeah, I get that question quite often. And the kind of, the other part of the question is, why are you so crazy? And that, so I've always loved wolves. I mean, as a kid, and we all read Never Cry Wolf by Farley Mowat, and they're such a misunderstood animal. They're so important in the ecosystem, and they're so misunderstood that, and so I got my first one in 2003. He was sort of your typical 50% dog, 50 wolf. And then I got Tundra in 2007, and I had no intentions of doing in that the wolf education, but everybody wanted to see Tundra, And then we just started. We just, started with a cub pack, then a school, and then it's just blossomed. I've done 17 Zoom wolf conferences this fall for schools throughout BC, Dawson Creek, Kitwanga, a lot on the mainland. We've done 10 or 11 school visits. We do it all outside. We walk through forests and things like that. Most wolves in the wild are dead by 5 years of age. And it's because we hunt and trap them so much. There's over 1,300 wolves in BC a year that are hunted and trapped. Now, you can't eat them. And what I say to hunters is, the wolf takes a different animal than what the human hunter does. Typically they take the sick and the injured.
The other question was, is your center open to the public, and will the pups ever be reintroduced to the wilds?
No, the pups will always be here. We are open. We're not open for people to come and visit us for two reasons. One, obviously, is COVID. And the second is I'm in the regional district in Nanaimo, and they have told me I can't have public assembly, people coming onto my property to see them and that. But what I do is I do a wolf walk in the forest with Tundra. And I do that on Saturday, Sunday morning, 8 in the morning. And we take her into a park nearby. And I still am doing that. Even with COVID, what I do is I'll only do it with like a family group that's the intact family group. There's about 350 wolves on Vancouver Island, plus or minus 50. It's really hard to know what the population is just because these are animals that very few people see them. I've talked to people that have been in the woods for 35, 40 years and you don't see them, you hear them and that. Most of them are north of Campbell River and down the west coast of the island. There's not that many on the east side of the island. Now, there is some up in and behind, Ladysmith and Lake Cowichan and places like that. But the vast majority is in those two areas that I mentioned. On my website, tundraspeaks.com, if you go to the blog, there's one called The Death of Takea. Now, I call it Stakea because Takea is actually a Japanese name, and I think it's disrespectful to. If you know the story, the Songhees people believed that Stakea, the lone wolf that was out on Discovery Island, was the reincarnation of their beloved chief, Robert Sam, that died like 5 days before Stakea ended up on the islands. And if you know anything about the Songhees creation story, which I do, they're very connected to the wolf. In my view, in that there were two killers of Takea. One obviously was the hunter that shot him, and I'll talk about that. The other one is the constant repetitive interaction with Stakea, the lone wolf, out on the islands. That documentary on CBC, which was also, there was a BBC one done at the same time, that didn't help Stakea. And the photographer that kept going out there all the time, what happens is wolves don't want to have contact with humans. And when you constantly have contact with a wolf and you start to get it to trust you in the wild, that is the death sentence for a wolf. Happens all the time. I can tell you 4 or 5 incidents that I know of it. And so you can't do that kind of stuff. You can be in a boat, take a picture, but the Songhees asked the photographer to stay off the islands. It's their unceded traditional territory. and there was a refusal. And if you want to read another story of that, in the Hakai magazine, Hakai, Larry Pinn wrote an article about a month ago. But my blog was back in about May or June, and as soon as I knew what was happening in that, I knew it wasn't good for Stakea. That's my comment about it. You cannot do that. If you do it, if somebody does that again to another wolf, I can guarantee you that wolf will be dead. You know, I really see Tundra as a gift from the Creator. She's just been an incredible animal. And that's the 13 to 14 years that Tundra and I have been doing this. Many First Nation stories of people that have met Tundra, and they say, you know, this could be my grandmother and my grandfather, because they believe that the wolf, they go back to the wolf if they're from the, you know, the wolf clan or the wolf people. And here's another one, Tundra school book. It's kind of a complimentary thing for schools, you know, so it's kind of some adult stories, and the children like it. For the people in the Ladysmith area, there is some at the Salamanders books as well.
Thanks for your presentation. I recently read a book called Of Wolves and Men by Barry Lopez.
Excellent book.
He talks about in the book how humans know very little about wolves, even though that wolves have existed for so long and have been in interaction with human beings. Can you comment on the difficulty of studying wolves and why human beings have so many misconceptions about them?
You know, one of the reasons that we know very little about them is because we see very little of them. So, for example, that video that I talk about, where you can see the pair of wolves chasing the hunting in this elk herd, I saw that at a international wolf conference in Thompson, Manitoba in October 2012. And the top wolf biologists and researchers were there. People like Dr. Paul Paquette, who's a Canadian, Dr. David Meach, who's studied wolves since 58 or so. And David said that he showed us this clip, and he said he saw that in 1997. And so he'd been studying wolves about 40 years. And he said, this is the best clip of wolf hunting behavior that I have seen. And so here's a guy that spent, his whole life out there, studying wolves. And this is the best clip that he's seen. So what, when Barry says that we know very little about wolves, Gordon Haber, that book, Among Wolves, is a good start to see what their family life is like, because we don't know much about that. What I've observed with the ones that I have, and yes, they're in a captive situation, but what Gordon described in his book, I've seen very much what Mohegan has done with Stakea and Denali. The love that wolves have. Wolves are very sentient animals. They have great feeling. They're highly intelligent. They're way more intelligent than we are. And I can attest to that. And that they know what I'm going to do before I know what I'm going to do. For example, that little video I showed you with seeing the wolf pups at the entrance to the den, you wouldn't see that in the wild, because you're not going to be standing in front of a wolf den trying to take some pictures. And even if you try to set up a remote camera, when wolves can smell their prey 2 kilometers away, you can be well assured that they are going to know where that camera is, and they'll destroy it. And so wolves are really very, very sentient, and they're incredibly family oriented. We could learn lots from wolves about, good family dynamics. An excellent book that I read was called Spillover by David Quammen, written about 2012. They predicted COVID-19 back in 2008. And here's what, so what the top ecologists and scientists are seeing is that as we're killing off these top predators, such as, for example, not only wolves, but bears, cougars, lions and leopards in Africa, also in the, killing off the sharks. Watched a documentary about a couple of weeks ago, like 90% of the sharks have been killed. And so here, let me just read you this this is a study called the trophic downgrading of planet Earth. And trophic refers to nutrition in terms of, there's a trophic cascade. That was the impact that the wolves had on the elk as they killed them, and how that cascaded all the way down. So that graphic, you could see how the ecosystem repairs itself. Until recently, large apex consumers were ubiquitous across the globe and had been for millions of years. The loss of these animals may be mankind's most pervasive influence on nature. Although such losses are widely viewed as an ethical and aesthetic problem, recent research reveals extensive cascading effects of their disappearance in marine, terrestrial, and freshwater ecosystems worldwide. This empirical work supports long-standing theory about the role of top-down forcing in ecosystems that also highlights the unanticipated impacts of trophic cascades on processes as diverse as the dynamics of disease, wildfire, carbon sequestration, invasive species, etc. So, what they're saying is we need these top predators, and as we kill them off, then, we're ending up with more of these viruses because they attack us as humans. We become the biggest source of hosts. So, for example, wolves control things like chronic wasting disease, which is the equivalent of mad cow disease that you find in ungulates. And if you eat that meat, you're going to die. So many of the First Nation hunting associations are concerned, particularly on the prairies where it's very prevalent. It's coming into BC. There's no way of stopping it. It's sort of like King Canute trying to hold the tide back. He wasn't successful. And so once that starts to get into, for example, the caribou herds that they're trying to save, well, if it gets into them when you got 25 in a herd, you're going to wipe those herds out pretty quickly. Now, the wolf would know that animal's sick. And the kind of research shows that they know that the animal is sick. They kill it. They can actually eat the meat, but because of the amino acids that are in the wolf and canines, it doesn't affect them. So here we are killing off these wolves because, we're trying to save the caribou, even though we're logging extensively in their critical habitat. We're not going to stop that. We're just going to kill wolves. So they're going to kill wolves, and this disease is going to hit these herds, and they'll decimate them. It's very, very important, for us to really learn how to coexist with this animal. That's one of the cameras, night vision, and there's the other one, and you can see the wolves. So I live stream them during the day. You can see it on the YouTube channel, SWELL Wolf Education, and if you subscribe, which you just click it on, and you'll get an email when I'm up and live. And I also do it on my Facebook page, Gary R. Allan. So people want to get some more information about it, Q, they can just, Marina, they can just email me.